Welcome, Life Sciences, to another exciting life science lesson. We are looking at the heart. Well, we've actually looked at the heart. We're going to continue today with looking at the blood vessels, right? How the heart has to pump the blood throughout the body. We're going to look at this whole concept, right, of blood vessels, what their structure is, what they do, how they're going to pump throughout the body. And we're actually going to look at a new system as well today that I think you might not be too familiar with, and that could be the lymphatic system. I don't think you might not have heard about it before, but it's going to form part of the circulatory system. So we're going to get on with that. Very interesting little tidbit. If I show you, all right, this little piece that I did a little bit of research just to make sure that I was correct. We're doing blood vessels today. So when I talk about blood vessels, I'm going to be speaking about the arteries, the veins, and the capillaries. And what happens is if we take all of our arteries and veins and our capillaries out of the body and we lay them down 100,000 kilometers, you have enough blood vessels in your body to go 1.5 times around the earth, right? That to me, I think is pretty amazing. All of this blood, now remember, it's really important because why? We need to have so many blood vessels because we've got to make sure that each and every single one of our cells gets that vital oxygen. And then what happens? Cellular respiration, we produce carbon dioxide, and we need to get that out of our body. Efficiency, right? A lot of it, which makes it very important, more efficient, and we can get things done much easier. Okay, as I say to you today, what we're going to look at is this whole concept of, we looked at the heart. So now we're looking at the heart is this pump. How do we get the blood around the body? All right, what does it contain in? We're looking at this concept, what we call a double circulatory system. We're looking at the different blood vessels. Sorry. We are also looking at this concept of lymphatic system, and then we're going to finally end off with the diseases of the cardiovascular system. Sometimes things don't always work as they should. Right, remember a lot of terms that might be new to you that you're not familiar with. Make sure that you always, all right, are familiar with the terms. Are you familiar with the terminology? Not only to be able to understand, but remember you are going to write exams, you are going to write tests, and there's always there's terminology in your test. There's multiple choice, all of those things. And in order for you to understand all of that, you must make sure that you know the terms. Okay, so a picture that we should be familiar with, the heart, right? We have looked at the heart. We even dissected the heart, right, which was quite phenomenal. So when we looked at the heart, what is this heart? This heart is this mass of muscle, that's all it is, and what muscle can do is contract and relax. It beats, all right? It is the pump. So if I look at the size of my fist, because that's the size of the human heart, if I look at this fist-sized organ, that is just the pumping behind, all right, the heart, or the blood that we have to get through. Now, I've got top of my head, I've got to the very tiny bit of my toes. I've got to make sure that each and every cell, all right, in my body receives nutrients, oxygen, and food, right? And the heart is just the pumping part of it. The blood that I have must travel in these different vessels, and that's what we're going to look at today. But when we look at the heart, all right, one thing you will notice that we see a lot of are these structures, right, are these tubes. And these tubes are the blood vessels. And as I say to you, all that the heart is a pumping mechanism. We looked at how the blood travels through the heart, but the blood has to come into the heart and go out of the heart. And as I say to you, the heart is just this pumping mechanism. Now, if we look at our thoracic cavity, right, so here's my rib cage, right, and here's my heart, right, what is in close contact with my heart but these lungs? And that is a very important concept when we look at how the heart functions. And what do I mean by this is very important. our system, all right, first of all, is a closed circulatory system. Now, we looked at that in the previous lessons. When we look at this closed circulation, what does it mean? Very simply means that blood must stay, all right, in blood vessels. It must stay in it. So very simply, we need the blood vessels, all right, are going to transport the blood. We cannot have the blood leave those vessels. If we do, a whole lot of clotting process has to occur. But our body has what we call a double circulatory system. And what do we mean by that is quite simply, the blood must come back to the heart twice. All right, that's what double is. The blood must come back to the heart twice. How do I mean by that? Let's look at this function. Okay, so what happens is blood comes to, right, the heart. What color is it? Very often when we use the blue, right, it's deoxygenated blood. What does that mean? It's rich in carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is a waste product that we must get rid of, okay? So if it comes to the heart, here's the heart, it goes to the heart. The heart has to take it, pump it out to where? The lungs. That's what pulmonary means. Pulmonary is the word we use, any kind of lung connotation. So we've got to get, so from the heart goes to the lungs. That is circuit number 1. What happens in the lungs? A process called gaseous exchange. Gas exchange. And that's exactly what happens. Carbon dioxide goes out of the lungs, and what do the lungs put into the blood but this lovely fresh oxygen? So where does this fresh oxygen have to go? To the heart again. Second time around, double circulation. What does the heart then need to do? The heart now needs to pump it to the rest of the body. Okay, so when we talk about a double circulation, the blood filled with wastes, carbon dioxide in this thing, comes to the heart pumps it to the lungs change the carbon dioxide for lovely fresh oxygen, and it goes back to the heart. Double means 2, all right? So out from the heart, then back into the heart. Now remember, this is happening all at the same time. Comes into this heart, all right, and what do we have? Right, the heart then takes it, and that's why we need this pump. Remember, the left-hand side of the heart was nice and thick, and we squeezed everything out, and what did it do? It went out through these blood vessels. Okay, all right. Now, if you have a look at this diagram, it's a little bit more intricate, and basically what it's just telling you, right, is that every single major part of the body, because this would be your head and that would be your arms, every single major part of your body has to get oxygen, all right, and that is your systemic circulation. Okay, guys, now let's have a look at the blood vessels. Now, the blood vessels, right, are what the blood is going to be contained in. And very much when I think about it, I think about our road system, right? You've got to have lots of big highways, right, where lots of things travel through, and then the roads get smaller and smaller and smaller. It's probably the road by your house, because what do you have to do? Each house is a cell, and that's exactly the concept we're looking at here. So we've got big blood vessels, really big ones, and they're going to have to narrow down into these smaller ones. So we're going to look at the concept of an artery, a vein, and a capillary. Right, those are the names that we give to the blood vessels that are going to, right, transport the blood throughout the body. Guys, we have a closed blood system, and what that means is blood cannot leave the blood vessels. If you have a look at this diagram over here, you will see it is a continuous layer. So what we're going to find is lovely, fresh, oxygenated blood is going to come through these lovely, big, all right, arteries. And they need to get to the little, tiny little cells. And if they're big, they're not going to perform their function. So basically what has to happen is they've got to get smaller and smaller. So an artery will become a very small arteriole, and eventually when it gets to the cells will be this really tiny structure that we call the capillary, and we'll look at the structure of that just now. So what happens is, all right, all the lovely oxygen and food gets deposited, and the carbon dioxide and the wastes come back. They now need to go back to the heart. Why? Because they're filled with carbon dioxide. So the capillaries, now from going from big to small, we're going to go from small to big. The small capillaries are now going to go, because they're full of carbon dioxide, we use them as blue, they're going to go into a small venule, and those small venules are going to enter into really big veins. And those veins are then going to take the blood to the heart, and the heart is then going to pump the blood to the lungs, right, to get nice, fresh, oxygenated air. Okay. Let's have a look before we go into in depth about an artery and a vein and a capillary. We're going to hit back on mammalian tissue. Mammalian tissue is going to come back here and bite you in the behind. All right, what do I mean by that? If you have a look at the labels, all of them, all right, are going to be from, right, mammalian tissue. So when we look at a blood vessel, okay, we got on the outside, we've got this really nice connective tissue. A blood vessel must keep its shape. But what does a blood vessel have to do? What's behind it? A pump. A blood vessel has to pump as well. So that means blood vessels, all right, should also have a muscle, and blood vessels stretch and relax. That means there must be some elastic tissue in there, okay? So we've got nice connective tissue, collagen, right? We did it in a mammalian tissue. We've got elastic fibers, we've got muscle, and lining the inside, guys, this very inner layer over here, right? Put your tongue, all right, on your cheek, that lovely, smooth, squamous epithelium. Squamous epithelium, lovely, smooth, thin layer, lines your mouth, but it also lines the blood vessels. Why? Because blood needs to have this really, really smooth run in it. Okay, guys, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back.